for HR professionals to kind of sit in that middle zone, they are both employee and spokesperson for the organization. And so the purpose is really to get those two entities aligned.
Hello there. This is John Bernatovicz, your host of the HR Like a Boss podcast. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend. I've embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals, and I'm trying to understand what it takes to do HR like a boss. On today's show, I'm so excited to be joined by Willory's marketing director and all thing HR like a boss advocate, Bridgette Klein. Bridgette's been a great friend of mine and a colleague for the last 7+ years, and I cannot wait to continue the special series we're doing on the HR Like a Boss podcast, where we're showcasing the great talent that we have on the Willory team. So Bridgette, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I'm super excited to be here.
And I'm so glad to have you. What a great time that we've had putting all these podcasts together and presentations, and your help in writing the book and supporting me with all that. We would not be here without you. So a big thank you. For those that do not know you or you're not connected with on social media, would you mind just taking a minute to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're working on these days?
All right. Well, as John mentioned, I am Willory's director of marketing. So that encompasses a lot. I have a lot of really great fun projects, but ultimately kind of the steward of Willory's reputation, ensuring that people have a great experience when they work with Willory. Before that, I worked at a regional art museum in the communication department, assisting with promotion of exhibitions, editor of the quarterly magazine, social media, etc. Previous to that, probably no surprise to anyone who has talked to me for any extended amount of time, I did work for Starbucks. I am a huge coffee person. I actually didn't drink coffee at that time, but do now, in basically pots at a time. And my background is in how people come to and use social media specifically. So why do people go to social media? What is the purpose of doing that? And what do they get out of it? And I joined Willory. I think back to that interview I had, John, with you at Panera. And you said, well, why Willory? And it was the culture, which was apparent through the website. And then also the fact that I believe HR has so much potential.
Well, Bridgette, I start all of our guests out, and you know this obviously already. You've been a behind the scenes producer for the HR Like a Boss podcast since its inception, and I know you inspired me to not only do the show but also create the structure around it, where we start and end the podcast with the same question. We're going to keep after that. And I know you know what the question is, so I'm sure you've been prepared to think about this. How would you describe the purpose of human resources?
I would describe the purpose as human resources as the conduit. It is the position that sits between the organization as a whole and the employees as individuals. Obviously, I do not have an HR background. The majority of my HR experience is with Willory, what I've kind of learned through osmosis there. And I wanted to join Willory because of the HR perspective. I hadn't really experienced a strong HR department, one that advocated for employees, but also had all of their ducks in a row when it came to the policies and the procedures, et cetera, for the organization. And so for HR professionals to kind of sit in that middle zone, they are both employee and spokesperson for the organization. And so the purpose is really to get those two entities aligned.
Now, for those that don't know Bridgette, and I know I've already kind of pumped this up a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, she's probably the number one reason, well, she is the number one reason why I wrote the book, HR Like a Boss, and why we have the HR Like a Boss podcast. And so for those of you that are curious about how that came to be, Bridgette, please share your side of that story.
All right. Well, I think ultimately my role in Willory is to be the organization's support, support people in the goals that they want to achieve. And so that started in 2018 when you were putting together the presentation on HR Like a Boss. It was, I think, early on in 2018, Untitled. And I think when we discussed it, we were like, that's it. Because the idea is that it kind of plays on two levels. It plays on the idea that HR should have some level of leadership, but also on the idea of the do things incredibly well, or as we've been using the definition, amazingly awesome. And so HR has so much potential. And I know working through that presentation, putting together the facts and figures, it just kind of opened both of our eyes to how important elevating HR out of this super tactical policy only perspective and moving it towards seat at the table, strategic alignment was important. And then it just resonated with people. Maybe early on that was because I would show up to the presentations in an elephant costume.
Yes.
Which I am terrified of elephants, but I think that helped get over some of that fear when you force yourself into a situation way outside your comfort zone. And I just remember sitting outside Newark, ready to make my grand entrance, and you could just feel the excitement in people. So it resonated. And then obviously with the pandemic happening, and we've been kind of talking about other ways to expand your approach to sharing the message. And I think the pandemic really allowed people time to sit with their goals. I know that's, I think you started saying, I'm just going to write one sentence at a time, and there was another idea brewing, and then just HR Like a Boss kept getting these requests for virtual presentations. And then there was a pivot to it. And I think it resonates with people for the first and the last question, very specifically, what is the purpose of HR and how do you do it better, essentially?
I'm curious, Bridgette, from a marketing professional's perspective, I know you do a lot of research to make sure our blogs and our content that we have at Willory are on point to trends and things that are going on in the marketplace. Tell me about something that you've seen that's impacting our clients or our candidates from a marketing perspective that's influencing human resources and business.
Ultimately, I think the biggest differentiator about the future of HR and the past of HR is technology. We've talked about the investment being made in technology, and I think it's really ultimately technology helps the table stakes and then allows people to move the needle forward, as you were talking about. And so obviously when we talk about technology, we talk about a repository for information. We talk about a place to help with accountability and performance reviews and et cetera, but it's also an opportunity to create automation. AI and automation are just world changing for organizations. It allows you to do more faster and with the right people in the right seats.
Tell me how you would describe someone that does HR like a boss.
I believe someone who does HR like a boss has respect. They are someone who the employees, again, can trust, feel engaged. They look to them as a leader. And then the organization, again, respects when HR comes to the CEO or other leadership with an idea to improve the organization. And so someone who has respect, someone who is able to deliver feedback in a emotionally intelligent way, someone who is able to kind of combat the stigma of HR. And it's all based on this idea of trust and respect.
Bridgette, outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the HR Like a Boss podcast. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving a rating or review, or better yet, subscribe and share with a friend. This is our final episode of this season. I want to say a very big thank you to our guest, and we really appreciate our listeners for making the HR Like a Boss podcast what it is. We'll see everyone in the fall when our new season starts. And until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.